Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Octant Community Meeting. Today is June 10th, 2020. We have a short agenda here today, but we want to go through a few things that's happened since we last had a meeting 2 weeks ago. The last week's meeting was, of course, canceled because we wanted to, not have a bunch of meetings that, not have a bunch of meetings last week. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and let's get started.
Thanks, Jonas. Yeah, so we are, we're coming off the O.13 release, and we did a dot release last week to fix a couple issues. One was the HPA printer bug that Sam fixed up. That one, a lot of people were running into that pretty immediately, so we wanted to get that out quickly. I think we got that out the following day, or same day even. No, I think following day, wasn't it? So yeah, we got that out. And then there was also just a little nagging issue, which won't really impact people, but it impacted us. It's the TestBed inject linter warnings. They were spamming stuff, making it hard to find real errors. So that also got fixed in the O.13.1 release. So we encourage everyone to upgrade and be on the latest release. And as always, please report any issues that you're running into. There are actually a couple outstanding issues that got opened up. I didn't put them here on the agenda, but there was one that got opened up about certificates and connecting to, Octant was having trouble connecting to the self-signed cert inside a local network. That's something I've been looking into, trying to figure out exactly what's going on there. I'm having some issues with replication. I understand fundamentally why the error is happening from like in the technology, but I don't understand how this person's encountering it. So I'm keeping my eyes on that. I'm gonna actually send a comment out on that issue to get some more information about what might be causing it in the setup so I can replicate it. And if we aren't able, if it's not something that Octant can fix, hopefully it's something that we can at least put documentation around or point people in the right direction and should they encounter an issue like this. So, and then the other one is a new issue that came in around contexts and context permissions. I'm playing around with kubectx, which is a context management tool, and I'm trying to replicate this this error where the context permissions get changed or mutated in some way, and then Octant is no longer able to read that context. And I'm not sure if it's Octant's fault or if it's some other tool's fault or what all permutations of this made this thing happen. It's actually the it is, where is it at? It is Octant crashes on, I think it's that one. Yeah, I need to change the title of that one. Yeah, so this is the issue. We realized that it's getting a permission denied. This person was running Octant previously with the O.12 and was not having any issues like this, and then that cropped up. So they've been helpful in responding with like their configuration settings and what tools they're using and the versions. So trying to also kind of determine what's happening with this one as well. So if anyone is watching this or hearing this and they've run into these similar issues, please feel free to go comment on these issues and add some more data or information that could help us kind of resolve them. So I will, those are the two outstanding issues that I've seen come out of O.13 that people were previously running O.12 and not encountering this issue. So those are the main things I wanted to cover today. And then we have a demo. So we talked a few weeks ago about some work that happened with creating some documentation around our components. This is useful for plugin authors as well as for us, because a lot of times we're digging through the source code to remember how a specific component works or what the YAML structure, JSON structure, or and vice versa is of that component. So we created some documentation through the work that that Sam led, and then we decided that we'd be better to migrate that to the Storybook tool. The migration is currently in progress. We've done most of these things. Sam and Milan have taken care of most of these items, and we are slowly working through the rest of them. I suspect that we'll have this done sometime next week. It doesn't seem like there's that many outstanding, and some of us have a short week this week with the company holiday being on Friday and such. So likely it'll be sometime next week we'll see all this land. But Milan's going to give a quick demo of what we've done so far. It's going to give folks an idea of what they can expect when this gets released.
Sounds good. Thank you, Wayne. Let me share, hopefully, the right screen. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right, yeah, as Wayne said, this is our second attempt of doing the documentation. It's really important especially for plugin users, but for everybody else. So we are trying to get it a little differently this time. And Storybook is a really great tool that should help us doing that the proper way. And as Wayne said, this is still work in progress. I just want to show you where we are right now. And this may change slightly by the time we finish the work. But so this is basically the Storybook page. As you can see the list of all the components. And on the right side, you can see the canvas that shows that component. And there's some knobs there that you can play with for each component, so you can just go there. This is basically the data that's passed into component, so it's very useful to see that and try different options. So if I change that to timestamp, you'll see the updates, the editor right away. Some of the components we've done so far are listed here. So here's the list. Some that I like to play with is very simple text. You can just say, hello, my world. And you can see the text is updated. And this component supports the markup. So if I change this to true, it updates the component. So it's a really good tool, not only to see the components live, but to play with the different options. And also it's good for experimenting. So some of the early prototypes we done, for example, for the resource viewer, are done directly here in Storybook because it gives us developers a really fast development cycle. Some other stuff too. And also the one important thing about the components is the docs. So Storybooks has support for docs too. And please ignore the white theme here. We're still trying to sort that out and to make sure the theme is the same as in the background. So ideally, this should be the same theme as the rest of the application. But here we will give a little more information. So how is that component used? We'll show it live here as well. And for each component, we display the props. Those are the component props that are passed into Angular object. And for each component, we can display as much docs as we want. I think we still need to do a little more work and adding some more color here, some more description, but basically this is kind of the framework we are hoping to go through. And it's really important for our plugin developers to have a tool like this. This is all I got. Any questions?
No, this is really great, Milan. Is there a plan for like how we want to structure, what am I trying to say? Like the work in progress stuff, like resource,
Right.
like the new resource viewer and the preferences and things like that. Is there a plan for like when those things get upgraded or become
Right.
official components? Will they then get moved into the upper components list, or will they stay down in others? But I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Right. I think once we are happy with something, it should get upgraded. And become the official component to move to the upper category. Thing is that this stuff at the bottom can be hidden too.
Okay.
So I used Storybook in my previous project, and we had so many stories that were never shown to the user, but there was a special key combination to show them inside the Storybook, and we used those mostly for testing and for, testing some edge cases. Storybook can be used in so many aspects, and one of them is end-to-end testing, because basically you have a page for each component that you can put in different parameters and then run your site person or some other tests against it.
Yeah. I like that. Okay. I wonder if it would be possible for us to actually have a toggle in Storybook that says like show experimental, so that way the default view, when we deploy this, the default view of Storybook is to only show things that are
Right.
that are core features, and then they could toggle experimental and see the other things. Do you know if something like that's possible?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
We should be able to add some additional controls inside the Storybook, like changing the theme shouldn't be that hard, and it's sometimes really useful to see how the components behave in different themes, and showing the more experimental features and stuff like that.
Awesome.
Any other questions, comments?
All right, thanks, Milan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I wanted to call out two other pieces. So we're actively working on things, and some of them are larger things that kind of dissect big pieces of the code base. And I wanted to call those out just because there hasn't been a whole lot of movement recently, because some of these more larger backend changes are currently being worked on. But Sam is currently focused on removing the hard dependency on needing a kubeconfig to start up Octant. This is something that has been asked for a long time. It also is something that kind of it leads the way into some of the refactoring that needs to be done to allow us to operate as a desktop application, but also in cluster deployment. So I don't know if Sam wants to add anything to that or not, but I just wanted to call out that that's currently being worked on.
Yeah, and I'm trying to do my best to break it apart into smaller issues. And one of the reasons that I haven't been creating big issues for it is one, I'm not 100% certain on what direction to be taken with it. But also there is we just have a lot of internal code that probably should have been split up a bit more to begin with. And so a lot of this might just end up being like shuffling code around first in a way that makes more sense for the refactors to happen first. Once that is done, I think we can start making this into better bite-sized chunks of work. And if people wanted to pick up issues on the way, we can, or if not, we could just do it all in one big push.
Great, yeah, thank you, Sam. The other thing that I wanted to mention was, this is work that I've been doing that's been going on for a little bit now, but it was loading cluster access at cluster client creation time. So what that means is right now when Octant starts up, it makes some assumptions about the resources that it has access to in a cluster. And given those assumptions, whenever it tries to list or get or watch those resources, it'll make an API call out to the Kubernetes server and then get back whether or not it has permission to do that thing. And then it kind of stores that permission in a cache and attempts to refresh that during every attempt to list or get that resource. If it fails, if it's unable, if it's told by the API server that it's not allowed to get that resource, then it goes into a back off state where it will attempt to refresh that permission over time, but it's still doing it when the list or get calls are probably are being accessed. So we've created a new library that will go and essentially take your config, and it will go to the subject access API, and it will pull in an entire list of everything that you are allowed to do in the cluster, and it will map all of that into this cache of the resource and the verb. And then we do that at client creation time versus at startup time or at the initial load of Octant. And what this allows us to do is, instead of having to now check whether you have get or list or watch permissions during every single API call, we can make a safe assumption that you have those permissions because you started Octant with a config that did have those permissions. The other benefit is that should that permission go away, so we go ahead and we try to do the list call and it returns unauthorized from the API server, we can now then, we can invalidate the entire cluster access model that we have and then force it to refresh itself. And so in the case of short-lived client certificates where your access might go away and come back intermittently as you wait for some third-party tool to refresh that cert or lay down a new kubeconfig in your directory, Octant will no longer be attempting to do lists and gets of resources. It'll be waiting for the actual cluster access to come back, and then it will get all of there'll be a explicit refresh command that the user can perform to this say, okay, I have access again, go ahead and refresh. Or Octant will say, hey, I see that there is a new kubeconfig. Do you want to refresh your access to the cluster? And then you can just click yes, and it will do that. So it's creating a kind of a new way for Octant to not only interact with the cluster, but also inform the user that something has gone wrong with their current access. Right now, Octant will just continue to spam API endpoints and to not really be informative to the user. Just things will kind of just stop showing up, and it'll dump error messages out into the console and all of these things. So the work that Sam is doing to allow Octant to load without a kubeconfig, combined with the work that I'm working on for cluster access, will kind of remove a whole host of errors that Octant currently suffers from, as well as make the overall user experience a lot better. So that's it there. Any questions on that? Cool. And then the final thing that I see Jonas added in there is June 17th, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time. We're doing a CNCF webinar on Octant. This will be a guided kind of exploration of creating a normal like containerized workload and migrating and moving that into a cluster, and some of the issues and things that kind of happen and come up while you're doing that. And we'll be using Octant as well as other tools to kind of navigate that and figure out, kind of explore the different things that can go wrong and how to fix them, and how Octant is working to kind of give you all of that information in a way that is more easy to understand than running a bunch of CLI commands.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, this is a part of the CNCF webinar series. They have webinars on a bunch of really amazing cloud native focused projects, Octant being one, of course. So yeah, this is going to be super fun. And yeah, please just click the link and register so you have it on your calendar.
Great. Anyone else have any questions or anything to add?
I can add one more. There was a fix to the cytoscape component, which is used in the resource viewer. And all it really does is, if you kind of notice right now on 13.1, it creates a style sheet to style the resource viewer every time you click on it, but it doesn't destroy that if you navigate away from it. So for people who have Octant running perpetually for a long time and is weaving in and out of resource viewers, it might be worthwhile to use the nightly build at the moment if you want to squeeze out a little extra performance.
Great, awesome. I will add that to the agenda as well.
Awesome. Anything else anyone wants to add to the community meeting for today? All right. With that, finishing up the community meeting for this week. Have a fantastic rest of the week, everyone, and see you all next week. Have a good one.